Good morning. Morning. It is February 20th, Thursday here, and it's the Talk Show. And hey, we're doing this live again in the morning. And joining me as always is Chris Gomez. Chris, good morning.
Hey, Rich, how's it going? Good morning, everybody.
Good. A little bit of a slow start this morning because
Yep.
I was here kind of late last night with the Philly.net user group. We had a good little turnout and talked about being not being an admin and installing applications that you might need on your laptop, which was kind of fun. And then I talked about something I seem to be talking a lot about, which was GitHub models. So it was a good couple of sessions there. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I really wish I could have made it. I wanted to see Justin Deering, right? His talk
Yes.
about working as a non-admin um, is it used to be, I think, in fact, impossible. But over
Hmm.
time, I actually used to really explore more and more. Like, can I run all these different things as a non-admin? And I would love to have seen the current state of that because I can't say that I've really checked into it in a while. So that was interesting.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, we finish up the show notes and get that up there later on this morning and post it to the LinkedIn group so that everybody can see it. But that'll be a chance to. I know Justin had a slide deck that kind of walked through all the things he was doing with all the commands in it. So it'll be
Okay.
fun.
Yeah, that was the Philly.net user group. So
Yep.
which I think a lot of folks who watch this show know that we're involved in. So
Yeah.
but yeah, this morning, I wanted to see if we could take some time to go to a topic that's pretty near and dear to me because every year I work with a nonprofit called We Connect the Dots that puts on a hackathon event that's directed at middle and high school students with no experience required to build their first website addressing a social or global problem um, related to I believe it's called the United Nations Sustainability Goals. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. And so basically, you go to that site, the students go to that site, and there's a list of goals there, and then they can pick a topic. So it's a little bit, it's not just development, it's also teaching them how to work as a team to address a problem. Because I think, as you know, in our line of work, you might be building a piece of software. Sure, there's a technical detail to it, but there's also the subject matter expertise for that topic. It could be healthcare, it could be insurance, it could be banking, it could be games. There's some there's some expertise that has nothing to do with the code you're writing.
Right.
So when we do that hackathon, we support students. Early days, we used to support students with a PC or Mac. Um, and I think over time, well, especially with COVID, many students in this country were handed Chromebooks for school for the first time.
Yeah.
Some school districts were already going that direction with some kind of device mandate, whether it was Chromebooks or not, or tablets or laptops, traditional PC laptop.
Hmm.
Um, but I think in 2020 the doors were blown open, so we modified one of our goals to say, how do we support the student who wants to come do this and only has a Chromebook?
Right.
Now, I want to preface this by saying, I know if you're a Chromebook expert, or even if you're not, you can find documentation today, which I'll bring up while we're talking here, where you can. I don't know if the correct terminology is to say that you're jailbreaking your Chromebook. That may not really be it. That may
Okay.
be incorrect. But the point is that you are installing software on a Chromebook um, in a way that most people that use Chromebooks, you're kind of living in the Chrome browser. And while you might use software that saves files, those are probably being saved to a cloud drive, probably.
Right. Yep.
It's not the kind of system where you work locally. So while you can you can still do this because, in fact, here's documentation right here in the Visual Studio Code docs talking about how to install VS Code on a Chromebook. And so the first thing right here is you enable support for Linux, native Linux. And so again, I'm not trying to tell you that you can't do this on your Chromebook. You can, at least according to this documentation. But here's where the problem is. If you're getting your Chromebook from the local school, this is locked down.
Right.
Yeah. So now that set us back to square one of you can't do this. So what can you do?
Right.
I know that a lot of our audience is going to be familiar with. Hold on, let me just get out of here. I know a lot of our audience is going to already be familiar with the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and that's fine. I don't know exactly if where we want to go is to build up a library with those kind of shows. I mean, maybe. I'm not saying that we shouldn't.
Right.
But let me bring up one other thing here. So let me get this on the screen here. Sorry about that.
Okay. I got it when you're ready.
Okay. Well, I turned off the presentation. So
let
me share this here. And I'm going to go ahead and pick this. It turns out this is an 8-year-old video. I really can't believe it's been 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
8 years ago, I set out to make this video here. Use CodePen to make your first web page. It's 5 minutes long. I intentionally edited the heck out of it. I mean, I'm talking, I got in there and pulled out half seconds of silence because my goal was to get this under 5 minutes. Now, I didn't get there, but I got pretty close. And this video was very successful, at least as far as I'm concerned. 19,000 views, and even some very nice people who said, "Hey, I had to work on homework, and thanks for doing this." So this was 8 years ago. At the time, I picked CodePen because you could do it in your browser. It was free. CodePen is still a great resource. We're going to look at it in a little bit. But the expectation I kind of want to set for today is that you and I are going to have a little bit more of a conversation. It's not going to be 5 minutes, bang, 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 bang.
Right.
But I think this could lead, for me, to a set of videos that we could either post on the Dev Talk Show as smaller videos, or I could post here, because there is a need for it for this hackathon. I talk about the We Connect the Dots hackathon. It takes place in December. And Rich, you've participated in it before as a mentor.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for that. But again, it's held on site. It's also held remotely. And the students work together to learn, often, many of them, how to build their very first website. If I had maybe looked into it a little more, I actually think I can. Some of the websites are still out there using the same tooling that I'm going to talk about. So if I maybe set an agenda, it's going to be, how can you get started? What are some tooling to get started, and then even get this published and online, right?
Yeah.
And if you've watched this show, you may already know some of the places we're going, because I have some favorite places that I go. They're free, they work, they're quick. I don't have anything against a lot of the paid options out there. And in fact, what I'd love for you to do if you're watching is, if you have some suggestions for tooling to use or places to publish that are either free or very low cost, I would love to hear them and add them to the list and understand your successes with them, because this particular nonprofit is always looking for, what do we send these students home with, so that if they are inspired to continue learning, they don't have to pull out a credit card. They don't have to, because just imagine trying to go to mom,
right,
and saying, "Hey, can you get me an account here?" And then, well, I mean, everything from the parent who says, "Well, I don't know, how much is it going to cost? Is it going to be a runaway spending? Or, oh, are you going to use this? Or is it just going to sit there?" I mean, all the things that I think stop parents from maybe investing in such resources, right?
Yep.
So I've always been a fan of, if I can have a free path that gets you pretty far, then maybe both the student and the family gets excited about that, and then they will invest, you know, and you can expand your education. So
and that excitement is what's important, right? When you get excited about doing something, then you don't focus on, well, it's, you know, the time you're spending doing it. It's you get passionate about it, which is awesome.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And so I think we may end up with a series of links here. I need to, at least what I think I'm going to do is just get something started here where I can put these down. So I'm going to start, and I know this may seem very, I don't know if this seems Microsoft centric, but look, I think we have to acknowledge that Visual Studio Code is one of, if not still, the most used editor in the coding world. I have not looked for statistics lately, but I do know that it was number one, and I suspect that it probably still is. I admit that I haven't looked in a while, but I think the Stack Overflow survey showed that, and maybe some others. But you know, it's because of Visual Studio Code's extensibility. And the fact that people can come in here, you know, people use this on their Macs, they use this on a Linux machine, they'll use it on Windows, and it does. You don't even have to be working in any stack that you might imagine is related to Microsoft. I mean, of course, you working in Azure, you know that you can support anything in Azure.
Right.
I know that sometimes that message is hard to get out, but you can, and so you could run Go on Azure Functions if you want to. I don't think people necessarily generally associate like Golang with your typical Microsoft developer, but the point is that doesn't matter. So number one, go ahead. No, I was just going to say number one is get Visual Studio Code. So
yeah, definitely. And I think I kind of turned that around. I was talking to somebody last night about that. You know, there's certainly a Microsoft centric view of, hey, we have services where it doesn't matter what you as a developer build in, it'll run here as close to natively as we can make it. Right, just basically flipping a switch and saying it's Go or it's Python or Ruby. So I think that's where the shift is a little different. And then it comes down to, as a developer, what kind of tool and language do I want to use?
Right, exactly. So number one, I would say, you know, if you're on Windows, you're on Mac, maybe you even are a developer that has a Linux desktop, which sometimes on this show I like to bring out the Linux desktop. I think it's fun.
Yeah, we've done that. It's been a while, but we've done it.
It's been a little while. And then there's some really neat features with WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. There are some really neat features where, I know this sounds a little weird, a little Inception-like, but I can run Visual Studio Code and it's running in the WSL instance, but on the Windows desktop.
Yeah.
And there are
remoted into that space.
Right. So sure, I could do the flip version and run Visual Studio Code in Windows and then just tell it to connect to the WSL instance.
Right.
Both ways work fine. I've been really impressed with the support for Linux desktop applications running in like we could probably do a whole show on that. Running, you know, in your WSL instance, but they just feel like they're running in Windows and you're just all here. Everything's just here, which is kind of cool. So if you have Windows or a Mac or Linux desktop, I would say just go ahead and get this, because you'll see some of the advantages to having the editor locally. But remember, one of the talking points I had is working in a Chromebook, right? Now, unfortunately, the Chromebook in our home there's two Chromebooks in our home. One is my wife's. She's a high school teacher. The other is my daughter. She's a high school student. And they're both at school. So what I'd love to do, and maybe over the summer, is I'd love to have that here and we bring that up on screen and we could do it all, you know, make sure we really understand what the limits, quote unquote, are when you're in that space of a Chromebook that you don't own and your administrator, being the school most likely, is not going to let you install the Linux subsystem on it. So
Definitely.
that's another. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I gotta pause for 1 second. Hang on.
Okay. So your option then, if you just need to do all this in a browser, I like pointing people at vscode.dev. Now, vscode.dev is Visual Studio Code in the browser. In fact, what's interesting here is it actually opened up the last set of files I was working on. To be fair, I really wasn't even paying attention to what was going to come up here. But vscode.dev just popped up and it opened my very latest, what I was doing last time. And that's cool. I love that. So let me bring up VS Code. Let me bring this up. And in fact, I'll even create a new text file and just, let's see. So VS Code says select a language. You don't have to follow these steps, but I don't think they're horrible to do. So it says select a language. I'm going to go ahead, grab the mouse. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to do one better. It's got a tooltip there. Control KM. So let's try it. Control KM. Control KM. Oh, okay. Select language mode. This came up. I'm going to type HTML. I've never tried this before. And it did awesome. The same thing. It did the same thing that I think would have happened if I would have clicked with the mouse. So if you're the kind of person that maybe wants to get your hands off the keyboard, okay, Control KM. But here's another tip. And again, I'm in Visual Studio Code right now. So Visual Studio Code installed on my local machine. Visual Studio Code's HTML editor has built-in support for a helper. I'm going to call, let's see what they call themselves. It's a toolkit for web developers called Emmet. I don't know if you're familiar with Emmet.
I've heard of it. I've not used it.
I wish I was more familiar with Emmet. I feel like this is a toolkit. We were just talking about keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
And memorizing some shortcuts to keep you your hands on the keyboard. To be fair, yeah, I'd love to see this. This is Surly Dev here has got a great comment coming up. Best shortcut ever, besides Control Z, Shift N10, F10, closely followed by Win B. Okay. We'll have to look at.
You going to try it?
Well,
maybe I should try it here locally and see what happens.
Okay, so Shift N to F10 brought up what I believe is, I think that might be a replacement for the right-click menu.
Okay.
So I think Shift F10 might be, hey, there is a right next to your Control key on the right is also the context menu, but a lot of us don't use that.
Yeah.
Right? That's been there since Windows 95, folks. When Microsoft added the start key and the context key and said, we're putting two new keys on the keyboard. And if you weren't around in 1995, the whole world said Microsoft they're never going to get people. Well, every keyboard manufacturer in the world added it because Windows 95 was a massive, massive hit with people standing in long lines at Fry's Electronics. I'm really bringing back some old times, Micro Center, to bring that box home. So anyways, Shift F10, and I honestly think I might have, in my past, I think I knew that. And then Win B, it didn't do anything here, but I bet you, I'm sure, I'm not trying to say it's not important. So Win B puts the focus on the tray. Okay, and I see why none of you saw that. None of you saw that because my system tray is off screen, but now that I'm looking at it, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And you can navigate around on those system icons. That is awesome.
And of course, he is right that not all keyboards have the menu option key, because something that has changed since the Windows 95 days is people are getting portable keyboards. They might be smaller, and so they don't have that key. Maybe has been left behind, right?
Yeah, but we still have caps lock.
Yeah, but we still have caps lock. And I don't necessarily want to derail this any further, but believe me, I have been looking for a way to disable that key for a long time. So what is Emmet?
Thank you, Surly Dev, for the comments and welcome to the show. Yeah.
Emmet is this way to learn shorthand to produce HTML and even CSS quickly.
Okay.
Okay. So I will tell you the one piece of Emmet that I do know, and here we are back in Visual Studio Code, is that when you are sitting in an HTML file, which we got to, you saw how we got to it, or you can come to this select language mode and pick. If you do nothing more than just type an exclamation mark, it shows you that's an Emmet abbreviation. And it says, I'll produce the skeleton of a website for you. So all you got to do is hit enter, and that's it. So I tend to teach the students, because I'll show them, you're trying to teach a student in a short amount of time how to build your first website. If you show them this and try to walk them through it, no offense to people, but let's say you've never seen HTML before, you're going to be lost. You're going to be lost instantly. So I have no problem with eventually going back and saying, let's examine what this is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just want to get someone excited about what's going on, I like to just say, let's just use this Emmet syntax. Boom, there it is. And I'll put it on a slide, and I'll link them to Emmet, but I'll say, you don't really have to know any Emmet. I just want you to know you can get this skeleton fast and you can begin working.
That's cool. Because that's what you want to get to, right? What's that quick F debug?
You want people excited about what's going on. So here I am in Visual Studio Code, and I also brought up vscode.dev. I can do the same thing here. I'm going to say open folder, and what open folder does, because I'm using VS Code on a Windows PC, and you do have to give it this permission. I'm sure I've done that so long ago that I don't even know where the permission is to disable it. It might be interesting for me to figure that out, so that way you can watch the process. And it just says, what folder do you want me to connect to? I tend to like to keep things in a source folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm even going to take the step of creating a new folder today. And I'm going to just say, I'm just going to call it TDTS Online. And I'm going to give it access to that. Okay. And so now I have gotten the permission from the web browser. So maybe what I don't remember is if I have to do this every time, or if this happened. But this is the web browser saying, hold on a second. Are you sure you want him to view the files in that folder? And I'm fine with that. So then now this is Visual VS Code Dev saying, okay, are these files that you trust? And that's because VS Code.dev, people can write extensions that might run on your files, and they want to make sure that you're not just throwing them at your Windows folder or something. I can do the same thing here. I can create a new file. I can even call it index.html and VS Code.dev. I'm getting another VS Code.dev is going to be able to edit files in that folder. And I'm going to say, yep, that's cool. Remember, I'm now working in the browser. This should work on your Chromebook, but I believe that on your Chromebook, it's going to connect by default to your cloud drive. I don't believe this is going to happen locally. I'll have to double check that when I actually get a chance to do this on a Chromebook here with us on the show. I can use the Emmet syntax here, and I'm ready to go.
Now, you didn't have to load anything in there to get the Emmet syntax to work, right?
That's built into VS Code's HTML support. There's not even an extension. Great question.
That's awesome.
Many times, if you're an experienced VS Code developer, first question out of your mouth is, "No, what extension is that?"
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. Right, there's something in there that was doing all this.
Yeah. Now that is a great segue that I'll go ahead and take to extensions in VS Code.dev.
Yeah.
And you can install extensions in VS Code.dev, which is really amazing. So for example, we're going to look at some of these because they work in VS Code.dev and they don't, but okay, I guess I said that backwards. I want to take a quick trip back to VS Code and show you how do you view your work as you're working, which a lot of you may already know. But if you're brand new to web development, you're watching the show now or in the future, then you're going to want a way to see what this produces. And right now it doesn't produce a whole lot. All I'm going to do, and I usually have students do this, is I just usually have them type, I believe this is the correct form of Kernighan and Ritchie's Hello World. I'm pretty sure about that. I usually just have them type that. But how do you see what the web page is going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I need to save this file. So this is, again, this will be, I'll make this TDTS for the Dev Talk Show VS Code, because we're working locally in VS Code. Actually, I wanted to make that a folder. So TDTS VS Code. So that's a different folder now. And I really want this file to be called index.html. I will admit my keyboard wizardry, I've really lost a ton of it to Surly Dev's point. I actually used to be quite good at it. If I've ever talked about working at the Disney theme parks on the kiosks that were on Main Street at both Disneyland, Disney Magic Kingdom, and some other parks as well, we didn't have a mouse at those installations.
That's right.
I learned every keyboard shortcut in Windows. I could navigate Explorer. I could navigate that file dialog, everything. I've lost a ton of that. That was a pretty special time, though. So here we are. What do I do next? Okay. Well, you're going to see that in Visual Studio Code on the left-hand side, if you're totally brand new to Visual Studio Code, we have this extensions menu option, and I already have a bajillion extensions installed. I think I can even see what's installed. I have a lot of stuff installed. That's kind of, when you do a little bit of work here in Visual Studio Code, and you're going to have a lot of extensions installed. So I'm going to
if you have your
go ahead.
If you have your account signed up so that things sync across, now all of a sudden, you put one here, it becomes over. So the collection just continues to build.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that's true. I love that. I love that comment there.
That's awesome.
We worked at Disney and there wasn't a mouse. That's true. So I worked for Disney. I want as a contractor. Let me just to make that clear, on a project that we called Disneyland Forever. It was a kiosk music selection system. The idea was you spent your day at the park and you heard all this music on rides and attractions, or even just playing in the atmosphere. You could come to this kiosk and listen to it, and then you could choose to have a CD. This is how long ago it was. It was the late 90s. You could have a CD made for you right in the store, and there was this little robot that made it. And Disney actually loved having the robot. Like, they actually loved that look. It felt very space age to them.
Yeah.
And no, it was the thrill of a lifetime to work on that. And no, I did not have a mouse when I went in at 3 a.m. to work on those kiosks. We also didn't have T1 lines into the stores. We had to be physically on site sometimes in Anaheim or in Orlando. But it was fun. So
good times. Welcome, Waleed.
Yeah, Waleed, we haven't seen you in a while. I know, really great to see you. I know we also we're a little offline to end of 2024, but it's really great to see you. Mm-hmm. So, but to be fair, I want to make sure that I don't, I'm not misrepresenting. I didn't work. I was a contractor for Disney, but it was a great time. So, this is probably still the most popular live server for local development, just to see your website go. Yep. If you're a seasoned web developer, you can do React and Angular and everything with what we're showing today. But I'm taking this from the point of view of, we have these middle and high school students on their Chromebooks, and they've never built a web page before. So this is probably still the most popular one. So I want to show it, but then I want to show one other alternative. And I want to also acknowledge that if you type live server into the extensions marketplace, you are going to see a lot of different servers, many of which using the same icon. So I'm not saying that they're bad or good. I just don't know what they are. So like anything with Visual Studio extensions, you might have to do a little due diligence. But I mean, look at everybody in the world has built some kind of live server, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure if you have your favorites, that's great. Would love to hear about them in the comments. I would love it. But I still believe this is the most popular one. So I want to take one quick look at that. It's already installed. All you have to do to quote unquote go live is click the go live button that you will get when you have live server by Ritwick Day installed. So I click go live. I have to open that folder. I have to officially have that folder open, which I don't think I quite did. So let me get that here. And did I not save that? I may have messed up and not really saved it. So let's go ahead and say index HTML. And fortunately with Emmett, we can get back here very quickly. Oops, not where I wanted to type. Got it saved. Click go live. And it just creates a little web server on your machine. And it's local host. You know, this is not out on the web,
Mm-hmm.
but a little local host, and that's it. And you can get to work. And this is how I began with students, is I just have them. As you can see, there's really no HTML in here.
Yep.
But it's to get the point across. I actually use this as a way to get the point across that your web browser tries to interpret what you've done here, even mistakes included.
Mm-hmm.
And there is actually a whole other level of learning and frustration of what's the browser going to do if you don't get things exactly right. Way back in the day, in the early days of web development, I think the browser vendors found that if they just failed, then people just switched to another browser. So they spent a lot of time trying to find the best interpretation for mistakes, and even allowing those bugs to keep, if it was a really, really popular website, but it had a bug, like they sort of made it work because the attitude of the consumer was, well, maybe this will work in Netscape, and they might leave the other browser, right? So it was, wow, what a crazy time that was. So I'm just getting the point across to them that the browser's going to try to do something.
Yes. And all of that, everything you showed here, while we've taken some time to explain it and had some comments from folks who are watching, which is awesome. 15 minutes, 30 minutes. They get, they go from nothing to, I'm in a browser, there's my page, right?
To be fair, we move a lot quicker than this. And that's with brand new students. I think I'm taking the time to talk about the reasoning for why we choose the things we do. Why Emmett is chosen, why the first step is to have them just type plain text in, why we try to have them using a live server or another alternative if they're on a Chromebook. So let's go back to talk about the Chromebook issue here. So we're back in vscode.dev, which I'm pretending you might be on a Chromebook and all you have is a browser. Well, live server and most of its kin are not going to work here. They're grayed out with a the live server extension is not available in Video Studio Code for the web. It'll tell you why. I think we can probably guess the reason why is because you can't start a local server in the web browser.
Right, which makes total sense.
Yeah. So we're going to have to come back in a little bit and look at the alternatives here.
Okay. Just so you know, I may drop off camera for a minute. There's a lot going on in here today. Not only are we producing a show, but there is actually a live stream that's going to happen upstairs. Not me, the other parts of the organization. And because we kind of live in this building, there's a lot of equipment sharing going on. So I'm getting pinged, hey, can we get monitors and things like that? So I may bounce in and out, but I will let you run where you're going.
Okay. So the last couple things we're going to look at is one is I wanted to take a quick look at this second live server. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to, what I want to do is I don't know if I have to uninstall it. I might. Let me, so clicking in where it says go live, once I say go live and it starts, it's going to open the browser. I could go to work. I can also click this very same button to close the server. What I'm trying to do is see if I can disable this extension. I don't know that I can disable it just for the workspace. So I think I'm going to go ahead and uninstall it, which is fine. It's very easy to reinstall. But now that that's done, this go live button, I guess I wasn't sure to see if I have to restart because I want to install the other one. I don't know. It's very possible that both of those can function together, but I am going to make sure that we don't, that we don't have that issue. So let me just get VS Code started again. Let's make sure that live server is not installed. And again, I happen to show what I think is probably the most popular one. Microsoft has one called Live Preview, and I wanted to take a quick peek at it. It has a fair number of downloads. It's got a small number of ratings. It's also in preview itself. Okay. So I wanted to, and there have been some folks who have actually mentioned this to me, and they've said, hey, I really like this. So I can install the extension, and then I just want to see, yes. So I don't know, I may have to restart because I don't see down here. Oh, here it is. I think this is the button that I use for this. So let me click. I've got index.html. I'm going to click here. It says forward a port. That may not be what I was looking for. I want to be able to start the server. Show preview. So show preview opens up. There we go. Show preview opened up the web page here in a window to the right, which you may prefer. However, this URL, I believe, is going to be fully functional. So I can head back out here, paste the URL, which is running on port 3000, not 5500. And I still get, I mean, it's obviously it's the same thing. So let me go ahead and, I didn't even save the file. Although you could do this with live server too. I didn't save the file and the exclamation points just appear. If I head out to this, like maybe I had this on another monitor, they would just appear. That's kind of neat. But I'm not trying to disparage live server and say that you can't do the same thing. It opens to the side, and then I believe that I can say forward a port, and I would do 3000. And then I think you have to do local tunnel point forwarding once assigning using GitHub, which I don't think I have to put in an account name. And this, my understanding, is going to start a port forwarding system here locally. And what we get is this forwarded address, which I'm going to go ahead and say follow link so that it opens this external website. And this is using a feature called DevTunnels. So now what I want to do here is I want to say authorize DevTunnels. And I'm getting a lot of warnings here, right? Because I created this dev tunnel. I recognize this URL. I recognize it's the same URL that Visual Studio claims it's forwarding. You know, I can double check. Yep, it's the same one. I have the ability to verify that I'm not getting tricked to go to somebody's dev tunnel that's a scam website of some kind. And here we are still with Hello World. I'm going to, and again, I'm in the desktop version of Visual Studio Code right now. I just want to make it a little smaller so we can see some stuff side by side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use Emmet syntax. Maybe not all that helpful to just do one thing, but maybe what I'll do this. Maybe I'll do this plus we'll do a p tag and a unordered list, and watch this. I believe that is going to produce a H1. Well, anyway, let's just see what it does. So it produced the following HTML, but see how it produces it in a nested fashion. That might not have been exactly what I wanted. I might not have wanted it like that. I think what I probably really wanted to do, make this a little bit bigger so we can see it, is I might have wanted to say H1 plus. I think it's plus P, and then let's nest. And well, we'll have a P tag, and then in the P tag we'll nest an unordered list, and we'll nest a list item. Or how about we don't nest it? Let's just make it a plus. And of course, once you start typing, then it seems to not like it. So unordered list, but we'll nest 2 list items, hit the tab key, and you start to get this HTML produced for you. I'm not the best with Emmet overall, but as you know, I'm using the exclamation mark. Right? So live preview, it's live. I can start teaching. Oh, maybe I didn't really want to nest both of these. That's okay. No big deal. But I used Emmet to quickly. Now, I will tell you right now, I don't teach Emmet because I think that's just adding a layer of confusion. Imagine, again, we're talking to somebody who's never built a web page before, but I want them to say my web page, and I always make it about ice hockey. I say my web page about ice hockey, and then I have a paragraph here that I usually paste in, and what we ask them to do in the lab is we ask them to write about their favorite subject. It could be their favorite band, it could be their favorite novel, it could be their favorite just thing to do, their favorite theme park. It's totally fine. And as you could imagine, as the lab goes on, we start with content like this, and then later layer in CSS so that they can style it, and then later teach them how to add images. And then we'll pick one layout technology, and I will admit we usually pick CSS Grid because CSS Grid is kind of the easier one to explain in 15 minutes and have them lay their page out, right? So I
Very
love
cool.
this comment here that we just got, and I want to highlight it because Eric Taylor says, I'm still super green in the industry working as QA. I love being around code and in the dev environment. In other words, don't feel like you're too old to learn this stuff. Changed my life. Eric, thank you very much for that comment, because I think, as Rich knows, like one of the mission statements that I sort of have about myself and the Dev Talk, like the Dev Talk Show, we focus a lot on pro devs and oftentimes using .NET development. But I think, as Rich knows, another kind of mission statement for me is there's another audience I love to help and serve, and it's our next generation of developers. So our young people, like in this hackathon, middle school, high school students, and career-changing adults. And I've been very fortunate to know, and I have actually helped some folks who just said, I think I want to try it. I think, and they might be someone I say, I think you have the aptitude for it. I really do. And I have a very good friend of mine. He's about my age, about 15, maybe 12 years ago. Just, put in the hard work to kind of self-teach, and you got to get that first job. Mm-hmm. And then I think you got to find a way to maybe get that second job, because now you've proven to a few employers, you got a resume. After that, employers will say like, well, these folks hired him, hired her, hired this developer, and you're a developer. And so I really appreciate that, because that is something I really like to enable. And in order to enable it for some folks, especially in some communities where you don't have like a full-blown, I got a PC at home, right? I have all the tools I need to teach myself.
Right. What
if you just have access to your kid's Chromebook from school?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do for you? It's really, so live preview works fine if you have a PC, Visual Studio Code, if you have Windows, Mac, Linux, but and we got 10 minutes left, so I'm hoping I would really love to at least be able to demonstrate this. And then maybe if we need to do some deep dives and it's a good playlist, I would love to do it. We're in vscode.dev. I'm going to go back to this extensions list. And when I make it a little bit wider, okay, wait, this is not vscode.dev.
I was going to say, how did you do that full screen? Because that's not.
Sorry. I think, did I accidentally close vscode.dev? I might have. So let's see how nice vscode.dev is when I just come back to it. And I got to pick a folder. And I got to
the same one.
Source. We'll say it was online, which is fine. When I go to extensions here, when I type in live server, we've already looked at this a little while ago. I can't install live preview. I can't install live server. All of these wonderful servers are all coming up. Can't install.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a bummer. So the question now is, what do you do? And I have two answers for that. One of them is there are a lot of websites that will let you get started with development that's very similar to working in vscode.dev, because it will provide you a sandbox of some kind or some kind of server. So here's Code Sandbox. The plan is not to go into these. The plan is just to say that I want you to see them, because believe me, I've looked at a lot of them and I still may not know all of them. Another one is Replit, which used to be repl.it, but they seem to have gotten the full replit.com namespace. I'm sure if you owned replit.com before, you got tired of everybody coming to your site and saying, wait, where's that Replit? This is StackBlitz, which also had, like, if I just say bolt.new, it's going to pop up. In fact, I found this really interesting when I said, I want to build a vanilla HTML site. And it says, this might be a little small. I don't mean for it to be. And it thinks about it, and then it says, okay, and it set this up for me, and it basically is putting some code in, and it's answering, and it built it, and it runs, and I could click this, and it built a little counter.
Nice.
So, you can come back and you can get to work in here. You can get to work. You can deploy all this stuff too. I think they might use Netlify, but I'm not 100% sure. So I've already picked out 3, and believe me, there are more.
Yeah.
There are more. There's code spaces.
Sure.
Right? You could, in fact, I'm going to see if I can get this going real quick here in my own repository section here. So this is just my website. I'm going to make a new repository, and the owner will be me. Maybe in a future show, we'll go into this a little bit more closely. I'm going to call this quick website, and I'm going to keep it public, and that'll be fine. And I'm going to add a README file just so there's something in there. I just want there to be something in there. And I think, as you know, I can come here and I can say open. It's not open with GitHub Desktop. Here we go. Open a code space. Create a code space. This is going to open a Visual Studio Code-like experience, and I can work right in here.
Mm-hmm. The difference is you're running in a container, not directly in the browser, right?
I'm not. Yes, but it would work on my Chromebook.
Yes. No, totally. But I think that also opens up potentially some of the extensions that you might not have been able to access because you were sandboxed.
Yeah. In fact, whoa, wow, that's not what I wanted at all. Let's get rid of this because I'm trying to see. Let's get rid of this folder. I don't need that folder at all. I don't want that there. Here, I want a new file. I want index.html. As before, we know about Emmet syntax. We're going to put hello world. For some reason, it always thinks I want to modify the device width right away. We're going to put hello world here so we know that works. And now let's take a look and see, to your point, we can use these extensions through through code spaces, right?
Nice. So
that's cool. We can do one more, because this is a GitHub. I'm not gonna worry about these mistakes here too much. It's fine. Actually, I think I can delete that. Okay, great. Since I'm in a code space in GitHub, I can use this GitHub tab, and I can say let's create a pull request. But first of all, let's see the files that are changed. I need to get these. I feel like I used to be better. Here we go.
There we go.
The problem is because I'm not sitting at the command line is what's killing me.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go ahead and say created index.html, and I'm going to commit this. And would you like to stage your changes?
Oh, there you go.
And it's just gonna guide me through it quickly. I'm not going to say always, but I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Please get this up to GitHub, my repo, as fast as you can, and it should have done it. So if I head back here now, oh yeah, that initial commit. I think I called it initial commit, didn't I? You know what? I don't think I did. I didn't push. I didn't sync the changes or push them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I normally don't sync. I'm one of those friends don't let friends sync because it pushes and pulls. But because I know there's nothing to pull, I'm going to live with it.
Yep.
And here's my index HTML. So now what do I do? Well, we'll see if this can be finished before we're done here. In settings of a repository, I can go to Pages. And GitHub Pages is a free service from GitHub that will host pages out of a GitHub repository. And if those pages happen to be just static HTML, then it just works. So it starts out disabled. I'm going to say I want the main branch. And yes, please publish it. And so it is in the process of publishing. Now, you can use GitHub Pages for more things. I think, as you know, Rich, one of its default things is you can build a Jekyll blog with it. You can also configure it to run some GitHub actions and build a different kind of blog or a different kind of site and deploy. And you can deploy that stuff out. But if all you have are just static assets, it quote unquote just works. Now, this might take a second. So I'm going to back away and move on to the last thing I wanted to show people. And I often show the students CodePen. Just like that video I talked about way at the beginning.
Yeah.
There's a reason I like CodePen for learning. And if you look at the CodePen interface, this is the reason I like CodePen for learning. They take the part of web development where you learn about the structure of your HTML, you learn about making CSS, and then how do you link the CSS? You use the HTML tag to basically say, bring in this CSS file. Same thing with JavaScript. You use a script tag to bring in they take that away.
Oh, wow.
And all you do is you just start coding. So I can say my first page about hockey. And as you can see, we're getting a just-in-time rendering. Boy, I can't even type quickly. Then I could come to the CSS section and I can start writing CSS. And because I want to style the H1 tag, maybe I may not be doing this correctly from memory because I'm in a hurry. And I can make that blue. And it's just doing it, right? It's just doing it. And then I can go one further. And let's see. You can put some JavaScript in here, and you don't have to link it or anything. You can just start typing. So I think I can say document.getElement by ID, and I'm gonna have to go create an element with this ID in a second. And I'm just gonna call it a placeholder. And I think the way this works is that once I get that, and I'm gonna need it in a variable, so we'll call it a placeholder. And then I can say placeholder dot inner text, I believe, and I don't even think I got that right. I think it's inner text equals, or do I have to put I could say hello. I think that this is all correct, but I don't have anything with that ID on the page. So let me get just any old thing here. Then the ID is placeholder. No, I spelled it wrong. I spelled it wrong over in the JavaScript. So I'm going to spell it wrong here. And what I was hoping would happen, yes, that worked. It worked because the reason it worked is I have a p tag with no content whatsoever, but it has the ID places holder. And then I have some JavaScript that says, well, can you go grab that element places holder and set the inner text to hello? And it says, okay, sure, whatever you want. I could write a JavaScript to deal with buttons. I could write JavaScript. And CodePen takes care of making sure that that's executed after the DOM is ready. The old jQuery ready, or, and I'll do one more thing to the day, because I don't always remember this stuff anymore. I just don't remember it. So I've spelled it totally wrong, but Bing is going to save me. You might not need jQuery is a site that I will still go to this day to say, how do I create a ready function without jQuery? And it's here. It's not in elements. It's events, right?
Event.
So this is the jQuery way to do it. And you could do the same thing like this. And so I teach the students, you can take this back to your VS Code environment, which was not CodePen, possibly using, this happens to be using StackBlitz, or I could be in Visual Studio Code and, put this into a JavaScript file and so on. But if you're learning, I actually tell the students, ask to do the students a lot with this when they're trying to build their menus. That's where they always want to get fancy, is having a cool menu at the top or on the side.
The interactivity, yeah.
And I say, you might get really frustrated trying to build and test. Get into CodePen, where it's very helpful for you to work on this small thing and then bring the code to your site. That's a common recommendation that I have.
Yeah, because at that point, that HTML and CSS and JavaScript all work. They just got wired up together.
Right. You just have to wire it up. So according to this, is it saying that it's deployed? It is. Your site is live. So I know we ran through this really quickly, but I created a repository. I used code spaces to just put some real quick nothing into it. Went over to the pages settings and said, go live on my main branch. Every time I commit to main now, it's going to deploy to GitHub pages. And by default, what it does is it takes your username, spaceshot.github.io, and then the name of your repository, and this is going to be your site. So just this is what I will tell the students to do to get their sites online.
Yeah.
Just get your sites online quickly. You could get it online. I don't care if you're using the desktop version of Visual Studio Code or if you are using vscode.dev. And I don't say this to be disparaging of these other sites. In the past, we used to have the students just directly use one of these products. But one of the things that's changed over the years is they all, and this is fine, they all have like pricing. This can get confusing. There might be limitations.
Yeah.
40 hours. And again, I don't want anyone to think I'm saying this to be disparaging. It's just that I'm looking for paths that the student goes home and feels like they can continue working.
Yep. And
right.
One of the things, because we played around with it early on, was looking at Azure for doing that. And Azure for a kid who doesn't have a credit card, yes, you can have your free app service sites, but there's that hurdle to get to even get that going.
Yeah, there is. And to be fair, I probably have to look at this. Boy, this is really leaping in the different. There is this. If you're ever wondering what students can do,
that's new.
It's actually not that new.
Really?
You're going to be surprised as to how long this has been around. There's Azure for Students. Now, I want to make it clear. Azure for Students asks you to be older. It's aimed at college students, in my opinion.
Sure.
It's cool. You get Azure credit. They don't give you a credit card. There's a spending limit, so you can't start spending money. Mm-hmm. You can put in a credit card if you want, but you don't have to. I've never felt see how they say here, use your university or school email. I've never felt this is a good option for middle and high school students. That's Azure for Students Starter. This has actually been out a lot longer than people realize. Azure for Students Starter is available. You have to be 13 or older. You do have to reside in the United States, but 16 or older if you're in another country. And you verify your academic status through your organization's email address. So what they want you to use is they want you to use like your school email so that they know that you're going to a high school if you're in the US. And you get app services, functions, notification hubs. You get a MySQL database, App Insights, and DevOps.
That's awesome.
Now, it's limited.
Yeah.
But I believe it would be possible to use Visual Studio Code in your browser and deploy to app services, and there's your path.
Yep.
And then I think what you do is that you may upgrade, but you don't have to. But the key thing about this is they're allowing you as a parent and a student to get started. No credit card. Don't ever add a credit card, and you'll never get charged for anything, but you'll be stuck with the free tier stuff, which is fine. And in the end, you can keep renewing this until I think they allow you have to like quote unquote renew it every year, I believe, until you're out of high school, essentially.
Okay.
So we didn't demonstrate this. I have been able to get codes in the past for demonstration purposes because I'm not eligible, me personally. But I have asked, I said, hey, I want to show some students. And the folks who work in this group have just been like, how many codes do you want? Which is really cool. Because like when I said, I want to demonstrate to a student, but I'm not a student. Then they say, yeah, here's a code. And then it lasts a year and then it runs out. And then I don't have it anymore. So I know that last part we really ran through quickly, but I feel like there's a pathway. Whether you're on your own local machine, many students, many kids have a laptop they can use. And if they have a laptop they can use, you might not need to work that hard. Use one of these live servers, do everything locally, push it up to GitHub Pages, you're set. It's all free. It works. If you've only got a Chromebook or access to a browser, you can see there's a couple things to leap over, but they don't seem insurmountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a path there.
Yeah. We, on this show, in fact, did the Blazor WebAssembly standalone project, which produces a static site.
Yeah.
And we pushed it to GitHub Pages, and it worked. And I love that. I love it for its simplicity. I am not trying to tell you it's where you're going to go in production, but if you want to learn, it's there. So.
Awesome stuff. This is really, really great. And hopefully this is shaping your next time you deliver the We Connect the Dots session with the kids.
Yeah, in fact, so it's February, and I wanted to give that plug to We Connect the Dots. It's February now. We, in the past, have started thinking about the next year in July. After December's delivery we delivered the hackathon in December. We decided every once in a while, every few years, we kind of have this push for what if we reimagine this thing? No sacred cows. Everything can go.
Right.
Now, we've done this a couple times, and we've often still made some of the same choices, but we tried to re-examine it all. Like, are we really still doing the right things? We're doing that this year. And so we're actually in the middle right now of reviewing every one of those product offerings that you see, what's free, what's not, and even if it's not free, because it's a nonprofit, I don't want to say we, because I'm not in the nonprofit, but I do advise the nonprofit as like the education curriculum is okay. Let's write them some letters. Maybe they'll be willing to donate, right? That would be great. But at the same time, we are really taking a hard look at vscode.dev, and can we build that pathway to even a GitHub Pages? We'd also like to explore, which you and I didn't get to do today, using live share.
Right.
Because if there's one thing today's youth are more used to than we might be, is working together in a online document, whether that's Word Online or Google Docs.
Yeah.
That's natural to them. So live share enables that. And when I've gotten to show them that, here's how it transforms their workflow. As professional developers, we teach them Git, and the first thing they run into is how do they merge their work together?
Yep.
Every year I have seen the students naturally on their own flow to a model of you open the site, we'll live share to you.
Yes.
Because they don't want to deal with Git and merging and any of it.
Of course.
They
just save. Yeah.
By the end of Saturday, because Friday, Saturday, Sunday, by the end of Saturday, they're all doing it.
Yeah.
And I have learned to accept it, that because we're used to working a certain way, this may not be how the next generation works. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think it's really fascinating that that Live's preview from Microsoft uses dev tunnels to the extent that you could literally share this to anyone in the class and say, here, come look at how I'm doing. Where the traditional live server that opens a local server, you're stuck on your local box, which it's not bad. That's not a bad thing, but that's really cool that the live preview from Microsoft does that. It'll be interesting to see where live preview goes, because live preview itself, I'm not sure if you were sitting down when I showed this, live preview itself is in preview. So still being worked through. Okay. I always point out live server because it's clearly the most popular development server. Many people, including the very next one, say, hey, I've got a better one. But you know how it is, VHS and Betamax, right? This was the first one. It's the one everybody reaches for. It's got 60 million downloads. But Microsoft is building one. And some of the folks who were watching here, I think, liked some of the features, right?
Oh, cool. Okay.
So anyways.
I'll have to try that one as well.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're watching live, thank you so much. I love the comments. I really appreciate the story about somebody who's a Gen Xer like me, but began web dev a little bit later. When I was in college, companies like Yahoo were taking over the world, and we were this web thing's happening, and we started building little files in our notepad editors at the time. This is how long ago our school had we had a VAX. Okay. So we had to go into the computer lab, sit down at a terminal, have a terminal opened. I could build an index HTML file, and I could publish it at the longest web address in the world, because the web was brand new, but it was something, C Gomez, something, CSU Pomona, something. And back then we lived with those long addresses. We just said like, oh, here's the link.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a different time, but to see how far things have come and how much has changed. Back then we were told Java applets were going to be how we provided functionality to the web. And that never got the traction that I think the world thought it was going to.
Yeah,
so
and there were other things like ActiveX and things of that nature as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny, in the business world, ActiveX got such a foothold that it took a long time to end it. And I actually know, I think this is public news, that there are some organizations in this world who are probably still paying for support on it. I mean, I don't think that's a secret. I think you can, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's totally dead, but I remember I used to read news reports about like some branches of the US government are paying for additional support because they're not rewriting it.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, that's always the migration story is always there, right? We've done it. It works. Just make it run.
Right. It's easier for us to pay you to give us support than it is to, and when I say you, I mean, it doesn't have to be Microsoft. It could be anybody. Right. I don't think this is an uncommon thing. So anyways, yeah.
No. Well, this was great. I appreciate it. It's good to walk through those tools again, because sometimes it's been a while since we've looked at them, and it's good to kind of show the different choices that are out there. I love Emmett. I'm gonna have to get that back into my muscle memory, because when I do demos, I'm thinking about, well, what do I want to put on for the content, and like, well, there you go. It's all right there. So that's awesome. Appreciate you jumping through that. Thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. It's great to have the interaction, have people letting us know that they're out there. And if you're watching in the future, let us know you're out there by writing something in the comments below. Give a like, give a thumbs up. It's all about engagement, so we know you're out there. And we know the shows that you're interested in seeing us do, because we've gone through a number of different topics over the last couple of weeks, but really want to know what you're interested in seeing. So for everybody watching now and in the future, thanks for watching. And for Chris Gomez, we'll see you next time on The Dev Talk Show.